want to be winning the whole thing. So no matter who they play against, they need to play their best. But I do think we're going to see some really, really amazing times, especially in some of the dungeons that they're playing. We're going to see really high-level dungeons too. We see a plus 22 into a plus 23, which is the highest level that we have in this global final. And Spires is one of those really, in my opinion, technical dungeons where the route is really important. So we'll see what Complexity and Echo have for us here.
That's right. Game number 1 going to be Inspires. And as you said, there's going to be a lot of technical polls. We've seen a number of very challenging polls, and even a number of times throughout our group stages where teams are just having full wipes and not able to get the consistent run they want to see. But 2 of the best teams to ever do it squaring off right now here in Spires of Ascension.
Looks like there's a Resto Druid in Complexity setup. Very interesting choice. They don't have this Holy Paladin that we usually see. They're running the Kyrian Resto Druid they've been running before, actually, in their group stage. They really believe in this Resto Druid pick because they're running this new Kyrian Legendary that gives the bonded person extra stats. So JB is switching the bond from one player, from one damage dealer to the other, to constantly give them stats whenever they are using those cooldowns. And they really believe in this, while most other teams haven't really, they saw that Complexity is running it, but none of the other teams really said that they want to play it as well. They don't really believe in it as much, but Complexity is still sticking to it. And this first pull, you can see Complexity executing it quite a bit quicker.
Yeah, see, I think this is a really interesting pick in terms of, strengths that they bring to a dungeon run versus the Holy Paladin, right? The Holy Paladin, obviously the combination of Ashen Hollow and Wings is one of the strongest 4-minute cooldown bursts in general, right? They enable pulls with that burst. But specifically, the Resto Druid / just Kyrian Druid in general, whether it's on a Boomkin or a Resto Druid, it brings something a little bit stronger. You have that constant 8% stat buff depending on what Covenant your partner is, and you boost that every minute or so, or even lower depending on your Soulbind choice, but to 16%, plus a damage boost. I mean, I think it's actually incredibly strong for consistent damage on every single pull, rather than big burst damage every 3rd or 4th pull, and it's definitely a viable pick. I don't think it's trolling at all. I think it's just generally a very, very good pick, especially when you pair it with something like a Frost Mage or a Windwalker Monk that has cool damage for essentially every single usage of that Kyrian cooldown. I think it's very, very strong. And I think Echo's going to pull ahead here just because they're pairing that Ashen Wings combo with Bloodlust, but I think Complexity, if they play their comp correctly, should be pulling back while that Ashen Hall is on cooldown.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think it really depends on the dungeon, because Complexity, of course, is still playing the Paladin in some of the dungeons. I think it depends how much of an advantage you're getting from doing those Ashen Hollow pulls, right? Echo was able to pull their trash with the Tormentor into the boss quite a bit earlier. The mobs were on 60-70% HP when they pulled it into the boss. Because they have that Ashen and the Bloodlust, they are allowed to, or they can do that. While Complexity had to finish off the mobs first, and then they pulled the Goliath into the boss. Because they don't have the Ashen, they don't have that burst available to them to make that pull possible, while Echo was able to do that. So getting a little bit of an advantage. Scott and JB going down for Complexity, as that Goliath is just not dying, and the cheat death was not available for Complexity. They're trying to recover here, but this is incredibly hard, as Fired Up is proccing that Ice Block and the Seed as well. It looks like they're trying to reset here, and there's just no way they can recover. This is a huge time loss for Complexity. Very unfortunate death by Scott. And then the problem was JB going down immediately after. If JB didn't die instantly after, they could have battle rested the tank back up. But JB probably being in melee range to DPS, immediately going down as soon as the tank goes down. Wow.
That's as bad as it gets, right? Because in a 22 tyrannical setting, we already see from both of these teams, this boss is taking about 2 minutes to go down. 30% on the boss means you just lost 1 minute and 30 seconds, plus death timers, plus run back time. They are easily 2+ minutes behind now, more considering that they committed the Bloodlust to it. And Echo is just sitting pretty. As long as they're able to pull off these pulls without any major issue, they should handily take this first series. That being said, this dungeon is not over yet. We've seen so many pulls, even on affixes that don't really commit too much in the terms of danger to the dungeon. We've seen so many of these pulls just wipe teams non-stop, incessantly. So many pulls. The big spear pull right before the third boss, the triple angel pull at the end of the dungeon. There are still so many difficult pain points left in the dungeon that Echo's not out of the woods yet. We're right at the start of the dungeon still.
Yeah, Echo fortunately didn't even proc the cheat death on now on the first pull, so they still have that available. Fragments, no more cheat death available though on that side. And that pull that they just did is a pretty insane pull as well, because they pulled all of these stealth claws on top of the Praetor, and they also pulled the left side pack with the Ether Divers and the Skirmishers. So that was a lot of percentage. You can see the difference in trash percent between a Complexity and Echo. That difference is what Echo just did in this one pull, without many cooldowns available either. They didn't have the Ashen, they didn't have some of the other offensive cooldowns available. So really well done, really well executed, as they're now moving on to the next pull. Complexity, of course, having to fight that boss again. This time they don't have the Bloodlust available, so it's going to take them a little while longer to finish this off. But they have that consistent damage from the Restorer, right? They have that Kyrian Bond that constantly gives you more stats, so they should theoretically, outside of the Ashen windows, have more damage, as Syra mentioned earlier. So they definitely should have a lot of damage to catch up here.
Yeah, but again, I think it's going to have to come at the cost of a wipe from Echo if Complexity is going to find their way back in this match. I mean, they are just so far behind after wiping to the boss at 30%. I mean, they're making good time with what they have with no Bloodlust, but again, look at the timer on the boss. The boss is at 30%. They've been in combat with the boss for 1:30 now. Echo are about to complete the second trash pull after the first boss. So in the best case scenario here, Complexity are going to be 2.5 or so trash pulls behind Echo here, and they're just going to be praying for some sort of major mistake from Echo. And yeah, it's looking pretty bleak so far. But again, one of the biggest qualities that we talk about of our high-end teams in the MDI is the ability to pull yourself together after a mistake and continue to play the dungeon, giving yourself an opportunity to win should the other team make a mistake. And based on what we've seen from Echo in cup play, these guys aren't, they aren't the perfect team that we've always expected them to be. They lost a tournament against a team that wasn't named Perplex earlier this year, right? So, I mean, I think that in my mind, Echo's going to be able to close this one out, but I want to see Complexity play the rest of the dungeon clean so that they can keep their mental status just in check going into Game 2 and Game 3.
This is a very interesting pull by Echo here. They're committing the Kyrian Spear. One more thing to mention is that Echo doesn't have a second Kyrian. They only have now on that Vengeance Demon Hunter that is Kyrian, while Complexity has 2 Kyrian players, of course, with the Resto Druid and the Vengeance Demon Hunter. That means that Complexity has a little bit more freedom in what they do with their spears, while Echo kind of has to use the spear before they get to that platform after this boss that is just coming up, because you cannot pick up 2 spears at the same time. You have to use your spear to pick up the next one. And that's why Echo kind of committing that spear on that pull. We've seen many teams execute that pull that they just did without a spear. So we'll see what Echo does with their second spear. They're also doing the squad leader pull, which is actually very, very interesting, because they remember after the first boss, Echo pulled the left side trash and the right side trash, which usually allows these teams to skip the squad leader pack. And that is what teams have been doing in the past. And we praised that kind of strategy because we were thinking that squad leader is so inefficient to deal with. So it's good that the teams can skip it. But it looks like Echo wants to skip something later on. They don't want to skip this leader pack. They finished off the squad leader, then pulled the rest of the trash on top of the boss here, which is a very common strategy we've seen in Season 1 of the MDI already. And they're going back to that. So I wonder what they're skipping later on, because they're going to be up to a lot of percentage after this.
Well, I think the thing that you really end up skipping with this pull, is this enough to warrant skip? Oh my gosh, never mind, gotta get back into the game here. As Xaylia goes down, there's still trash alive, so this battle res is going to be hard to get off for them. Fragments is able to get it off with the use of that Cloak of Shadows, but they do have to pull it back together here. Xaylia fortunately has the wings available, pops them instantly on, coming back up to top everyone up and just keep them safe. But with that death, they're able to finish off the trash, but they still have to get through 60% of the tyrannical Ventanax. This is still a really scary moment, even though the boss has been kind of nerfed on the 9.1 patch compared to where it was before, it's still pretty dangerous on high tyrannical bees.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a bit easier, and I'm not sure what Celia died to exactly. There was still a lot of trash up. That's the difficulty if you're pulling this trash on top of the boss. Then all of a sudden you have so many things to dodge on the floor, plus the front from the boss, plus all of these orbs, and then you also have trash mechanics to worry about too. So definitely lots of difficulty there. Looks like the boss is getting lower and lower. You can see the Ashen from Celia is coming up in 7 seconds. So I wonder if they're going to be pulling the Tormentor that is up next after this boss. That is something we've seen these teams use the spear for, but Echo cannot use any more spears. They have to save that second spear for the Triple Angel pull, which I very highly assume they are going to be executing that, just because it is such a big time save. So I would assume all of these MDI teams. Celia going down again, actually. They do have one extra battle rush coming up. I wonder if they're going to be using a Gingy in that pot with that bleed on him. He does have the Dwarf Racial available. He does have the Dwarf Racial now, though. He's still sitting in that pot. He's going to be fine as soon as he comes up. Man. Yeah, the bleed is gone now. They can finish off the boss without their healer at this point. But yeah, still, quite a bit of time lost here for them.
I mean, small things like that, one at a time, are going to allow things for Complexity to get back into the game, and you can see they've all but caught up on trash count, right? They only need one more trash pull to catch up with Echo. They are still an entire tyrannical boss behind, so about 2 minutes or so, but I mean, a few more of those from Echo, and we could see Complexity crawl their way back in here. One of the things that Complexity has an advantage of is they do have the double Carrion. I didn't see if they used their Carrion Spear on that previous trash pull that they just finished off, but if they didn't, they will have still 2 spears to use later on, which could be used on that massive trash pull before the third boss that Echo is approaching soon here. And they will have one also for the Triple Angel pull as well. So let's see what their plan is going to be here as Complexity engages Ventinex.
Yeah, looks like now is picking up that Carrion Spear, and we'll see if they pull this or not. Looks like they're not. They're popping that Shroud. That means Varuth is gonna be, that 50% healing reduction aura is gonna be up on the last boss. We've seen some teams try to attempt that in the last stand tournament, and it looked like the teams that were trying to do that were just doing worse, because it was such a big hassle to deal with that aura on the last boss that sometimes it didn't even pay off. And this is a plus 22 tyrannical. So having to deal with a 50% healing reduction aura on the last boss, that is pretty dangerous. We'll see if they're going to be pulling that off, as Echo has to deal with basically no trash at all here. Actually, it looks like they did pull Varuth.
Okay.
So with the boss, okay, this is a crazy pull. With a spear too, so they don't have a spear for the angels at all. They're just going to be committing their Carrion Spear for Varuth, the Justicar, and a bunch of trash. This is crazy with the Menders as well in here. This is actually really good. They're going to be getting so much percentage, plus the Anima power, while also being able to cleave the boss. This is such a good way of using that spear. Yeah, I mean, if they don't need the spear for the Triple Angel, then this is incredibly efficient. Wow, okay, actually very interesting.
It's such a safe strategy too, right? Because you don't have to really worry about taking any of that major damage, and if you're not taking any damage, you're not really too worried about the healing reduction debuff that Execution of Varuth puts on your group, right? So bursting all that trash down with the Windwalker Monk in that spear, I mean, I like that. If they're able to pull off the Triple Angel pull with no spear, this is sick. I love this. And they also go for that trash pull instead of the ridiculously dangerous triple trash pull that we saw teams constantly wiping to throughout all of our cup play and all of our The Last Stand tournament as well. So it just looked so much safer than that triple trash pull. And check it out, just insult to injury, going again with trash on top of the boss while the boss is taking increased damage here in that damage amp phase, getting a little bit of that extra prio damage onto the boss from the Frost Mage and the Rogue here. It's just so good to have that there during the recharge anima phase.
Yeah, and if you think about it, they replaced that triple pull with that one leader pack, right? That leader pack they pulled in front of the squad leader pack in front of the second boss. That is the pull that they usually skipped to be able to just do an extra pull here in front of Orifrion. So it looks like they decided that it's much more efficient to just deal with the squad leader pack and then don't have to deal with any extra trash pulls here at all. Because if you think about it, after the second boss, they just straight went into the boss on this third boss. They didn't do any extra additional pulls at all. They just pulled Baruth blasted trash into the boss with that spear. So not having any extra pulls on this platform, actually very interesting. Complexity, though, on the other hand, they're pulling Baruth with the Helion, double Helion, and the Goliath here. So this is the pull that we've seen many teams do, also in the Last Stand tournament as well. They are committing their spear here. So that, I'm not sure if they used the spear before, so they either still have one spear left, or this was their second one, depending on if they used their first one already on that pack where Echo used theirs. This has always been a very, very difficult pull to execute, but you can see JB committing all of his cooldowns, using Tree of Life and Tranquility as well to keep everyone alive here, while these Helions are pulsing AoE damage on the whole group. Looks like they are fine though. Once Baruth is down and that 50% healing reduction aura is gone, then it's a lot easier to execute. It's really well done by Complexity here.
Yep, they're able to get through that trash pull just fine with the use of the spear, just like Echo, but I think it was still worse than what Echo did. Echo got free boss cleave out of it, whereas Complexity just didn't. So I think I still like Echo's strategy a little more because they ended up using the spear anyways, but we'll see how it ends up panning out for them. I think Echo's boss split is still going to be faster here. You can see that those boss splits on the bottom of the board there, the time between Ventanax and Orphereon going down was 4 minutes 33 seconds for them. Complexity would have to kill Orphereon in about 2.5 minutes in order to beat that, but I don't even think if they beat that by a little bit that they're going to be anywhere back in the dungeon. It's all going to come down to whether or not Echo's able to cleanly deal with all three of these angels here. First of all, let's see if they're even going to go for the triple angel pull, because that'd be crazy without a spear on its own.
Yeah, let's take a look. And yes, it looks like they are pulling all of those angels. They're now coming down.
Yeah, there they go.
They don't have Ashen available just yet. 8 seconds cooldown here on... This is very interesting, because they must know that they're pretty ahead at this point. I wonder if no one called to just wait for that Ashen. But it looks like they didn't want to wait, as the Bloodlust is also being committed here by Echo. And again, they don't have a spear available, so they're going to have to do this without the extra spear. And Frag's cooldown coming up as well at this point. Looks like he is committing it too. So we'll see if they finish it off. This pull gets more difficult the later on it goes, because these debuffs are just ramping up on everybody. They're going to be using their immunities to get rid of the stacks once they drop lower, but it's going to be more difficult and more difficult the longer it goes.
Yeah, they do, but they do. Everyone still has their dwarf racial available, right? They can still get rid of those stacks if they really wanted to, and there you can see the immunities coming out across the board in order to get rid of them. Nobody has any stacks available, and it doesn't even matter because all the angels go down. Clean pull from Echo here as they get to 100% trash. All they have left to deal with to pull out a Game 1 victory over Complexity here is to deal with Devos. Now, 22 Tyrannical Devos can be pretty dangerous, but again, the Dwarf Racials to deal with those debuffs, which are going to be the major thing that end up picking off people over the course of the fight, it's going to be really, really useful for them, and they should be, for the most part, safe on the boss here.
Yeah, things as well, especially since they ended up dealing with Baruth after all, so they don't have that 50% healing reduction aura, which is incredibly dangerous in a 22 Tyrannical Devos. So yeah, they only have to deal with the 50% slow and the 50% physical damage increase, which still can cause some issues here and there, especially with the the frontal charge Devos does, and then also the debuffs that you have to drop outside of the bubble before you go in. So it can cause some issues. Also quaking, that is something that we haven't even mentioned the affixes, because those teams have been just blasting through this dungeon almost as if there were no affixes at all. But we do have Inspiring and Quaking. The teams just dealt with Inspiring so incredibly well. It's actually crazy. I think I barely even noticed that affix existing in this dungeon. I remember one pull where Echo did to see like an inspired mop outside of a pack, and then they pulled it in later. But yeah, they're just dealing with it so seamlessly. It's really well done by both of the teams. Really unfortunate with that Complexity wipe on the first pull, because you can just see how fast they are too. I mean, look at their splits, look at their boss splits, right? They're so fast as well. Just that one wipe on that first boss cost them so much time, like 3 minutes you can see almost on that boss split on the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I really would have loved to see a much better just dungeon in general from them, so that we could have a good comparison of the Resto Druid versus the Holy Paladin, right? It's just, I think it really is actually very comparable in terms of how strong it is overall between the two picks, and unfortunately, we don't really get to see that here, because unfortunately, if you're tank guys, it doesn't matter what your healer's on, because you're probably going to wipe at that point anyways. I mean, hopefully they play it again next dungeon and are able to pull a win over Echo, because I'd love to see that Resto Druid pick come out great. I think it's actually, in my opinion, stronger than the Carrion Balance Druid, because the problem with Carrion Balance Druid is you have a Balance Druid on your team, which honestly isn't great in the MDI. 3-minute cooldowns don't really work that well for your pull pattern unless you have like a Bear Druid that pair along with it.
Yeah, I agree. And one more thing to note is that Complexity did actually save that second spear for this triple angel pull. And I guess that is something you could say, again, they kind of have to do because they don't have the Ashen, right? So there's just going to be a difference in routing. Like, if you have a Resto Druid, you cannot run the same kind of pulls that you can with a Paladin. But you can make up in between the Ashen windows for the time that you lost for not doing those big pulls. So I think it's very, very dungeon dependent. And I think the route that Complexity is running is totally viable as well, and totally, could even be faster than Echo's strat. We don't know, right? Of course, because they have that wipe. But yeah, Echo already in that last phase now. They have the 100% trash. They also have those 2 deaths on the board, which means that Echo did not play this dungeon perfectly clean either. They're gonna have a 20-minute time in that Spires though, and that is really good on a plus 22 Tyrannical, because those bosses just take so long on such a high key level. But yeah, Echo finishing off Devils here, and they're gonna be winning that first dungeon against Complexity 1-0. But remember, it's a best of 3, so we still have at least 1 dungeon left, possibly 2. Complexity wins the next one.
That's right, Echo taking that victory. And, Zyra, you mentioned it. It is pretty unfortunate we didn't get to see, a direct comparison because of those deaths early on the side of Complexity. But Echo's going to be taking that victory, and, of course, there's going to be more opportunities on this one. Dratnos, the series is far from over.
Yeah, game 1 going to Echo there, off of really the back of just that one big wipe. Otherwise, we were seeing competitive, fast splits out of Complexity, so definitely we're going to be in for a series here. Hopefully nothing that unfortunate occurs again in these future games.
That's right. We're always looking at how some of these different comps have been able to make large differences between the different teams. Nagura, particularly in the group stages, we started seeing a lot of variety in the compositions that we were looking at, a variety of healers, damage dealers, compositions overall. And now that we're in that globals, everyone's kind of coalescing into very similar things. But being able to see that Resto Druid coming out on the side of JB, it still brings that extra bit of interest for everyone.
To be honest, I'm actually quite surprised that we've seen so many different comps already now. Even in the halls before, where we've seen the triple ranged and the Guardian Druid as well. It's very interesting because, as you said, usually after the group stages, kind of like a meta evolves, and then everyone is running the same thing once they figured out what the best comp is. But it seems like these teams are really not sure on what the best comp is, or maybe there is no best comp. Maybe it just really depends on what kind of style you're playing, what kind of routes you can come up with, and what your comfort pick is for that specific route that you came up with. So really, really interesting, and I'm just excited to see if we even see more different comps from these teams in the rest of the tournament.
That's right. The day is far from over. And Dratnos, take me through that Spires as well. It's Complexity getting tripped up early and weren't able to recover.
Yeah, so let's talk about how that Resto Druid differs from the Holy Paladin again. Because of the way their Kyrian Empowerment Legendary and everything works, they actually add a lot of damage to the rest of the group by activating that empowerment, and that can happen basically every single pull. So you actually saw them earning quite a few seconds over Echo as the first pull finished up. Even though Zalia was doing more damage than JB was adding more damage with that Kyrian Legendary, and with just the regular Kyrian Empowerment on top of that as well, really adding to the group's speed there. But then we get to this first boss here, and unfortunately Scott went down. Now, when you have a Resto Druid, you sometimes get to do a battle res and save this pull, but unfortunately things just went south way too quickly here for that to be possible for Complexity. Unfortunate event there. Meanwhile, Echo, they're actually able to go into the boss earlier and bigger because they have the Holy Paladin with the Ashen Hallow, that 4-minute cooldown, which they had held for the entire dungeon up to this point. And they just drop it here. They try and drop it as look at the placement of the Ashen Hallow as well. That's because they know that the one of the bosses is going to go away for a bit, and they're trying to maximize the chance that it will still be in the Ashen Hallow. You can see it going away there, and they actually don't even chase it. They just stay right here with the other boss. They're not trying to cleave it down. They know that they've just got to stay planted. That's the result of well-practiced precision. And then, of course, on this second boss, Echo actually having 2 deaths on Zalia, ending up getting through it, only committing the 1 battle res as well, just leaving him on the floor for a while. Very much a vulnerable point in the dungeon for them, though. But then look at this huge pull around the corner with Varuth, with just everything you could imagine, and the spear. Using the spear there means they won't have it for the Triple Angel at the end, but they don't end up needing it. They're able to get through everything in the dungeon. Really, really, really cool strategy out of Echo. Lots of innovation, lots of refinement, and lots of precise play throughout the whole dungeon from them. So very strong run.
Yeah, and that dungeon was about 20 minutes, but I think it's been the longest dungeon that we've seen thus far from the tournament, and that means, Zyro, we're going to be going into one of the shortest very, very, very soon with Necrotic Wake, but it's our 23 Tyrannical that they have to go against.
Yeah, 23 Tyrannical, this is going to be very scary, especially once we get to the end of the dungeon, right? But I think you got to look at that bursting affix as well, right? That also makes the trash a lot more difficult because you can't kill too much too quickly without having to worry about those bursting stacks stacking up as well. So this is going to be very fast, but very dangerous with lots of potential for big wipes, and it'll be pretty dangerous in general. And I mean, we already saw the underdog take the first game off of the top-seeded complexity here.
Wait, what's
I
an
wonder if
underdog?
they're going to be able to take it 2-0. Oh, yeah, no, Echo's the underdog. They're a 2-seed coming into this one. That's what Tettles taught me earlier.
True, of
That's
course.
right.
Yeah.
Tettle's knowledge. We got to talk to him about platforms next. That was another thing that he did not quite understand of that one. But yeah, I mean, we didn't have 23s, if I'm not mistaken, in our group stages as well. So we're getting that gradual growth for the Keystone level, and it's not a massive performance boost, I don't think, across the board, Nagura, but we are, of course, having higher levels of renown than we had previously in our group stages.
Yeah, so the higher renown means there's going to be a few more empowered conduits, basically, but I would say it's very similar to the group stage. So the power that they've been gaining hasn't been much at all. Of course, 1 extra key level doesn't mean too much for these teams, but sometimes, depending on the affixes, it can be like a make or break it, depending on if a pull is possible or not, because these kind of teams always go to like the highest risk that they can possibly do. So if you add 1 more key level, that pull might not be possible anymore. So we'll see what kind of crazy pulls they're going to be doing in Necrotic Wake, because that's one of those dungeons where we have seen insane stuff from these MDI teams.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, both of these teams have been looking to innovate and maximize their effect in this dungeon. Let's see what they have in store for us as game number 2 gets underway here, as Necrotic Wake 23 Tyrannical gets going.
Right, so we'll see what kind of comps they're running. I think there's not going to be any big surprises here, because we need that priest. Looks like both of them are deciding to run the Shadow Priest. We have seen some teams that decided to run a Disc Priest instead of Shadow, to have that mind control later on for the cleavers. But it looks like both Complexity and Echo choosing to play that Holy Paladin instead and run with the Shadow Priest. So running the same comp for both sides. Both of the teams doing this very standard MDI pull with all of the trash plus the Tormentor onto Blightbone. Both of them committing the Bloodlust and all of the bursting stacks coming out. You can see everyone using those immunities to get rid of those bursting stacks and using the Dwarf racials as well. This is just such a dangerous pull, especially when you have bursting on top of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, you have essentially 2 lines of defense against the bursting stacks, right? You have your initial immunities / dwarf racials, and then also you have the Shadow Priest with a Mass Dispel available as well. That's like your last line of defense. They don't really want to hit that button if they don't have to, but they will if it means saving their team. Or they might not if it's Shaq. We'll see, because he likes trolling people like that whenever you're in dungeons with him. I'd hope he wouldn't do that in an MDI scenario, though. But yeah, no, it looks like people haven't really iterated on top of the general strategy in Necrotic Wake, because it scales with key levels so easily, right? The strength of the weapons and the buffs in the dungeon, they also scale up with you as the key level goes up. So the Anima Exhaust buff that you gain from this boss will also do proportionally the same amount of damage that it would do on a lower key, so they can use that to pretty much essentially completely heal the entire group through all of this trash without having to worry about being lethal, as long as you don't get one shot by something, right? That's the only thing you can't do, is get one shot, and as long as that doesn't happen, you should be totally fine here. But there are still scenarios where that could be a problem here, right? If you get double throw flesh by either of those harvesters off in the corner, they could very easily take somebody out if they both target the same person. So there is still some danger here for sure.
And it looks like there's a slight difference in strategy as well, as Complexity did not pull the Tormentor right away. They killed off the initial trash, then got the buff from the Goliath, then pulled the Tormentor on top of the boss, used that to cleave down the Tormentor, and then pulled the trash, the last one here. Well, Echo pulled the Tormentor immediately with their trash. That meant that they had a little bit less boss DPS because they were focusing the Tormentor down. So it looked like Echo was behind in boss DPS, but only because they already had killed off the Tormentor. And then they got the buff from the Goliath and ended up pulling the trash. In the end, they were 2 seconds apart. Complexity finishing off the boss 2 seconds earlier, but taking a bit more time to finish up the trash. So even though the strategy was slightly different, it ended up being the exact same thing when it came to kill time. And now it looks like both of them also picking up that first Goliath orb here and pulling the Necromancer. It looks like Echo already pulling the mini-boss, right? Yeah, so they moved a bit further.
Echo, did they... Yeah, they completely skipped the Necromancer. They just got their Anima Exhaust buff and then went past the Necromancer straight to Narzida, which is just way more efficient in terms of trash percentage. Look at where they are. They just put themselves an entire pull ahead of Complexity right away, just skipping the Necromancer. I mean, that seemed like it was great.
Oh, I'm not sure if Fregnance wanted to be in combat here. It looks like he was pulsing AoE damage with that with the Anima Exhaust, and that's why he pulled here. Looks like he is going to be engaging that boss fight using his Vanish to de-aggro the mobs that he had previously engaged, and now he's going to get gripped back down by clicks in just a second, while the rest of the team is fighting that Necromancer pack in front of that third Goliath that they're going to be activating in just a second. So a really quick run through by the Rogue to activate the boss. Looks like Lip is doing the exact same thing on the Complexity side as well. You can see vanishing off the aggro that he just got. Gonna actually running back already. He picked up the spear, it looks like. So yeah, a little bit of a difference in routing between Complexity and Echo here, but both of them being really fast. Echo already engaging a Marth here with Baruth as well, right after they had picked up that Anima Exhaust buff. With a Marauder too, looks like they are doing that same pull that we've seen some of the teams already execute, but this seems to be even bigger, actually. They have a lot of trash on top of this. Yeah,
there's an entire trash pack plus a Necromancer in here, and it all gets completely destroyed by Now's usage of that orb that they didn't use earlier on. I mean, that looked so easy for Echo. As long as they're able to get both of these mages down before the boss finishes. Oh, it's not even going to be close. That mage is going to be long dead, and now they can just nice and chill go get their anima buffs if they haven't got them already. Yeah, that was extremely clean. Keep an eye on Complexity though, as they go for essentially the same exact pull on the left there. It looks like they actually have less trash in it, so it should be easier for them. Yeah, there is a lot less trash in there. They only have the Necromancer for that extra trash percentage. So yeah, it looks like Echo has just been going for way more efficient pulls. They skipped one Necromancer in order to pull more trash together at once. I mean, Echo is just going for essentially MDI style pulls and taking it up to ramping it up to extreme. We thought this dungeon was pretty much already figured out, especially going up to a 23 Tyrannical, but Echo's still iterating on that strategy a little more, being just that much more efficient, and it's gained them 25% boss damage ahead of Complexity.
Yeah, that trash just died so quickly with, you know, they already had their Anima Exhaust pulsing on everybody, plus that orb from Now. It's just so much damage, and it really allows them to pull that much trash into this. Even though it is a plus 23 Tyrannical, that orb helping out with all of that healing on the group, making it so much easier for them to execute this. And of course, I'm saying easier, it was still probably incredibly hard to execute. Echo just made it look easy, basically. But yeah, Complexity, they have the same trash percentage, so they can move up into the Necropolis immediately after they're done with a Marth. And there's still room to make up time here, but 3:30 split by Echo between that first and the second boss, incredibly fast. We'll see how they execute this Necropolis now. You can see there's a Mind Tooth coming out on Sogadon to make sure they're not gonna be ninja pulling this, and they're pulling the rest of the trash together. Everything is being pulled except one of the Flesh Crafters that has been zapped by Fragments there in the corner. The zap actually broke now. I'm not sure if that was intended or not. they're using the spear. You can see Fragnance doing so much damage because he was throwing the spear on everything. Looks like it also hit everything as well. And it looks like they had no issues with aggro either. So really well executed. This is a pull where we've seen other teams make quite a few mistakes, either dying to aggro after throwing the spear or getting hit by other things. So really well executed by Echo. Looked incredibly easy how they did it.
I mean, that just looked like a walk in the park. Like they didn't have any issues whatsoever. No, but the scariest moment on anyone in the group was when Xaylia put Sack on now and went down to 40% because of it. That was it. That was the scariest moment in that poll for anyone on their team, and it was planned. I mean, they made that look easy.
Yeah, definitely. But it looks like Complexity is doing the same pull without committing. Oh, Fired Up proccing his Cauterize. That makes me realize that he's playing Fire. This whole time, I just assumed that he's playing Frost because that's what most of the mages have been playing. But Fired Up is playing Fire, but everyone drops incredibly low as JB goes down. He is releasing immediately because the trash is incredibly low already. They should be able to finish this off without JB, but definitely gonna cost him quite a bit of time as Scott is trying to run for his life as this Fleshcrafter is just standing in the air after the Dragon's Breath hit it. They did manage to finish it off though, but yeah, a little bit of a time loss here with that one death on Complexity's side. And they still have the spear though. Look, Lip still has a spear, while Fragments did commit it on their side. They only committed the orb from Scott on Complexity's side.
Yeah, that's actually a big save too as well. If they're able to one phase this next boss because of it, and Echo isn't, that will be enough for Complexity to come back, even though they probably are 45 seconds to a minute behind Echo right now. I mean, that is a big deal saving that spear. So let's see if that's going to be something that actually pays off for them in the long run. That spear is a lot of damage as the key ramps up, and you have to remember we're on Tyrannical as well. These bosses are going to take a long time to deal with. Unfortunately, though, Shaq gets destroyed by a cleaver there, instantly goes down, and he's going to have to release and come back too. So another death on the board for Complexity.
Yeah, and it also looks like Fired Up also has one of those spears left. So you have both Lip and Fired Up with that spear on their backs. We'll see what they're going to be using it for. They probably also have a bunch of hammers as well still that they can use. Well, Echo, we know they already used one spear at least since Necropolis. They very likely have one spear left at least. But yeah, if that one additional spear that Complexity has is going to be used on a boss, it could make the difference, especially because it is a 23 Tyrannical. So the bosses have so much health, getting that extra damage onto the boss, that might actually make up a lot of time. So we'll see if Complexity can make up the lost time that they have on the board with those two deaths and a little bit of a slower second boss split as well. Echo, though, they are now mind controlling the Fleshcrafter, making sure the next trash groups are spawning, just dragging along that Fleshcrafter. Looks like they're actually already fighting the boss here. As I said, they only have one spear left, I believe. So we'll see if they're going to be using anything for this one or if they're saving all of their weapons for the last boss.
Yeah, you can see just looking at the characters back here, they do only have that one spear, right? So that's it. That's all they have in terms of spear weapons. They still have a couple hammers. That's what they should have in order to deal with shields on the final boss. But let's see if they're going to be able to one-phase this boss on a 23 Tyrannical. It's going to be a tall order for sure, especially if they don't opt to use the spear. And with no major spikes of damage coming out on the graph, you have to imagine that they haven't opted to use that spear at all here. So this is definitely going to be a two-phase from Echo. There's no way you can one-phase a 23 Tyrannical without major weapon usage.
Yeah, I also don't think so. The boss is dropping pretty slowly. There we go. The boss is going back up. Xaylia did face that hook onto the boss though. So second phase, actually not that big of a time loss because you can get the boss down immediately after he goes back up. Looks like Xaylia did taunt that Stitchwork away for a second to make sure that they're positioned better. This is actually very important because that positioning is so crucial to be able to get the hooks correctly onto the bosses. So having the Paladin help out with a taunt to position is actually so smart by Echo, and it looks like they are positioned well with the Fleshcrafter as well. And that hook from the creation is going back onto the boss as he jumped one more time. Yeah, really well timed hook again as Stitch Flesh coming down, and they are going to be able to finish off the boss now. Now they have Bloodlust available, Ashen available, and that extra spear that they still have left that they're going to be committing on that last boss fight. So the last boss is going to be melting incredibly fast for Echo here.
Yeah, the spear was committed from Lip onto Surgeon Stitchflesh here, but they're still not going to be able to get the one phase off. This boss is going to go back up at 30%. They're going to have to hook him down instantly with that final meat hook. It just doesn't look like it's going to be enough. These random spot deaths have cost them a lot of time over the course of the dungeon, and I think the way that Echo routed out the middle section of the dungeon between the first and second boss just saved them so much time. I mean, look at that boss 2 split at the bottom of the screen. 45 seconds faster than that of Complexity. Still just iterating on design, on routing throughout the dungeon. This is the Echo throughout the years that we've come to expect to show up in the global finals. Remember, Echo has won the last 3 global final tournaments that we've had. These guys come to play in the clutchest of moments, and it's good to see them back here after they were just unable to take their group stage over Incarnation earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, the only way for Complexity to catch up here is to commit all of their cooldowns, maybe get a crit on that spear somehow that they still have left, and then they also have to fight. Oh yeah, sure, you can't crit anymore, so I guess that's not going to be out for them. It is possible that maybe if they skip the exile, because Fragnance actually got exiled for Echo here without being able to grip off, and Clicks also getting exiled here as well. Now Lip getting exiled for Complexity, so a bunch of people being gone, and you can see just how much more damage Complexity had because they had more weapons available. They saved all the way for this last boss, and you can see they caught up quite a bit on boss DPS. Remember their 10 seconds death penalty on their board, so you can see just how quickly that boss is dying with all of these weapons being thrown onto the boss, and look at the amount of damage that Fired Up is doing as well. I would assume some of it is the spear damage, but yeah, just crazy damage here by Complexity. Somehow, Echo now has another exile, and Gingy actually committing, actually dying here. So to get a rest back up, that means there's only 5 seconds difference in favor of Echo. So after the boss is dead here for Complexity, keep in mind they also have to kill off the Flash Crafter.
No, they're gonna win.
There's 5 seconds. Yes,
Look,
5 seconds for Echo.
What?
And I'm not sure that's gonna be it. Echo just somehow not having any damage. Actually, the boss is dying really quickly. That's it. Complexity winning.
Wow.
Oh
Talk
my
about
goodness.
that come from behind victory there, the side of Complexity, getting to the boss later, looking like it was going to be all she wrote, and they tie up the series here with that victory in Necrotic Wake, Dranos. That's just ridiculous.
Whew. There it is. Yeah, I mean, that was an incredible burst of acceleration at the end from Complexity. All those resources they'd been storing up with those weapons, kind of invisibly. You know, I think all of us would have been like, oh yeah, Echo's like 99% to win this thing when they pulled the last boss so much ahead of schedule. But actually, just Complexity had that arsenal in the bags. Wow.
Yeah,
I wonder if they were missing any weapons on Echo, because I remember, like, they also have a spear left? Like, I felt like there wasn't that big of a difference in weapons here in on the last boss, but apparently, yeah, there must have been either something went wrong for Echo, or Complexity really did save a lot more weapons than Echo did. Wow.
Whew. Maybe I'd also be looking for some of the Flesh Crafters. If one gets missed or something like that, that's also a ton of damage that they have to be dealing with as well. So, you know, it really goes to show how difficult a lot of these dungeons are, balanced on a razor's edge at that point. That Complexity, they did have their deaths. They had, you know, a couple here and there. They recovered from it. They staunched the wound as well, Zyro, and they are able to pull out a win as a result.
I'm just thinking back to, do you remember at I think it was, oh man, it was the League of Legends mid-season invitational when Shox went on like a nice little like rant about G2 and they're up 2-0 and they're feeling so good. I feel like that right now. I was like saying, oh man, it's great to see Echo back in their form. They're playing so good, and then Complexity's like, hold my beer. Let me just do some ridiculous single target damage here.
I mean, it hasn't been that long since the last stand tourney where you started cursing all of these teams. Like, there's no way they'll wipe to it. Wipes 5 seconds later. At that point, you've been on a roll, Zyro. So I'm just saying that we're kind of getting you back on track as well from this weekend. So with that tying up the series, though, that means we're also going to be going into a game 3 here, Dranos, in Theater of Pain, which we have not seen yet.
Yeah, Theater of Pain, exciting dungeon. We're actually going to see all 8 of our dungeons today, but now that means we'll be getting to see Theater twice, I believe. So it should be a fun one. It's going to be a heavily single target oriented dungeon, just kind of naturally, but then we've got bolstering coming in here, further enhancing that, further making it about dealing priority damage to those important mini bosses all scattered throughout the dungeon. It is fortified though, and only at a plus 20 level, so a little bit of a lower keystone than the last two we just had.
That's right. And, you know, you really just can't count out either of these teams. Stratos, this has just been a rivalry that's been brewing for such a long time. And in Necrotic Wake, we're really used to seeing such razor-fast dungeons, but also just catastrophic wipes, which thankfully neither of these teams had.
Yeah, let's take a look then at some of the things that went on in the Necrotic Wake here. This was the first boss where you can actually see, Fired Up on that Fire Mage, as was pointed out, dealing a lot of burst here. They ended up getting Blightbone low a lot faster than Echo. They only killed it about 2 seconds ahead of where Echo were at, though, as Echo's high sustained damage with that Frost Mage ending up sort of evening things out over time. But that difference, that'll become relevant again later, so stay tuned for that one. Here we are, though, into a Marth. Look at this huge pull that Echo does. When Echo makes this pull happen without any deaths and it's all looking clean, I was just thinking, wow, this has got to have made them so much time. But yeah, I mean, there is commitment, serious commitment of resources to stuff like that. Really impressive, though, that they're able to make it work out. Similarly, I mean, this pull into the Necropolis looks so beautiful out of Echo. The way that they group everything up, just the way they have everything managed. But again, you know, look at that damage coming from those weapons being deployed here. That's more resources that we won't see from them later. Now, I don't actually have a good count of exactly how many complexity saved on these things, but you can see complexity, you know, ends up with this pull going a lot shakier, ends up having a death on this pull. Maybe one fewer weapon committed here. We'll have to check the tapes more finely and look through the replay really thoroughly to see. And again, here you can actually see complexity. They're even having some slowness on Stitchflesh. There you just saw a cleaver go into the creation instead of into the boss, which sometimes is just unavoidable on this fight. But even with that time loss, even with the Echo strategy looking as good as it did, here we just see them getting onto the last boss, and look at Fired Up just ascending there. I mean, some of this might be weapons, some of this might also
He had
just
a spear,
be,
yeah.
the power of the Fire Mage, and that's actually really good with the spear, right? The spear is a damage taken increase for a short amount of time, so a nice burst from Fire Mage, you know, that's multiplicative with the spear, right? So you get even more benefit versus something like a Frost Mage that's dealing its damage in a more sustained way over the entire fight.
Yeah, and right there, it's just what you need to be able to get back into it, because it looked like Echo was very solidly ahead as they go into that boss, and man, Complexity really turned it up to be able to take that victory there. So let's kind of set our sights here on Theater as well, Nagura. A lot of single target, and Stratnos mentioned, but we haven't been able to see it yet from our tournament to be able to see what kind of changes some people might be making.
I think this is actually a perfect map 3 for these teams, because it's bolstering, right? And whenever there's a dungeon that is bolstering, then it completely throws all of the previous strategies out of the window, and you have to come up with something completely new. So you think about, okay, how are we going to play this dungeon efficiently? And these two teams playing that dungeon for the first time in this globals, we haven't seen any other team do this before, of course, which team is going to have the more efficient strategy and the more efficient route. I'm really excited to see how this one ends up.
Yeah, no question here. The winner is going to be moving on into our upper bracket to face up against Ambition here. So it's a very, very stacked first 4 teams that we're going to be looking at this point. Nobody wants to lose this, get knocked to the lowers, and have to fight for their own survival at this point. So let's see what these teams got for us. Game number 3 between Complexity and Echo takes place right here in Theater of Pain.
We might already see a difference in comp. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about, because Complexity has been playing the Raster Druid before in this theater, and they're sticking to it. They really think the Raster Druid is good for this dungeon, because they have been playing this in the group stage as well, while Echo is playing that full physical comp that we see a lot in Theater of Pain. We see that Prod Warrior that's incredibly good because of the Spell Reflect that you can use in this dungeon, while Complexity, though, actually sticking to the Vengeance Demon Hunter. That is something that I haven't done before. I feel like I remember them playing Prod Warrior plus Raster Druid, but it looks like they somehow decided to play the Vengeance. Very interesting.
I think you're right. And something else that I'm also interested to see is that neither of these teams opted to pick up that Arms Warrior tech that we saw Incarnation develop in week 3 of the MDI. I think that's also very good for this dungeon as well, potentially even better than what these comps normally look like. But so far, it looks like the Holy Paladin is going to be faster on this boss, but that's to be expected, right? The power of the Ashen Hollow plus Wings in conjunction with the Bloodlust is going to give you that much more boss damage here. It will let you get through this first section of the dungeon faster. We really have to wait until the Ashen Wings comes back again off cooldown to see whether or not the power of the Kyrian Resto Druid tech comes into play. Now, I do think that there is a little bit of added strength in terms of how the dungeon works with the Ashen Hollow Wings. Anytime there's forced downtime in your routing, such as this RP right here, where you just kind of have to wait to get into the dungeon, that's forced time that your cooldowns will come back up, right? So that's pretty good as well. But they are going to be pulling trash, this Executioner, into the next trash pack. But like you mentioned with Complexity, they pulled the trash that they skipped. They're going to be in combat with it, and whenever they get through this RP, that trash will snap down to whatever they choose to deal with. It's probably going to be with Executioner Varuth here, so in about 10 seconds or so, that trash should snap down.
I really like this. This is such a cool idea by Complexity. Getting that extra trash pack into Varuth, because that is something that the teams struggled with, these MDI teams, because you kind of want to deal with Varuth, because it's so incredibly hard to deal with it on the last boss, and you also want that extra power because it gives you a DPS power, not a defensive one. So lots of teams have been dealing with Varuth, but there's just not a lot of trash around that he can skip, that he can pull into it. So teams have been trying to do efficient pulls with Varuth, and some of them try to pull the Shackled Souls, like Echo just did. But I really like this by Complexity. Just having this 3 extra mobs on top of Varuth seems so incredibly efficient for them, and they don't need the trash for the 100% at the very end either, because they're going to be killing a champion for it. So really, really nicely done by Complexity here. And Echo already moving on. They're going to be a little bit quicker because they finished off the boss quicker. You can see the boss split at 23 seconds in favor for Echo because they had that Ashen available. So yeah, we're going to see a difference in some of the boss splits depending on when Echo has cooldowns available, but Complexity should be more consistent. Complexity should be having more consistent damage, so they should be able to make up time whenever that Ashen is down.
Well, the other thing as well that we don't really focus on too much with the Ashen Hollow as well, that I think we really need to dial in more often, is because it is a 4-minute cooldown, you kind of want to make sure your route is set up to pull with, to be, like, have some sort of pull ready whenever your Ashen is on cooldown. Otherwise, you're kind of using it on random pulls, right? You really want to make sure Ashen is used on something very specific, whereas the Kindred Empowerment from the Kyrian Druid can kind of just be thrown out whenever, right? Without too major of an issue. So I think it's definitely a better pick in general, just to make sure things are more consistent. I like the idea of the Kyrian Druid more than the Holy Paladin for most things.
It depends, really, right? Because
sure,
the Paladin is going to be better if it allows you to do a pull that that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. It really makes up a lot of time. So I think it totally depends on the dungeon, and Complexity agrees, right? In Necrotic Wake, they were playing Paladin as well, because in Necrotic Wake, you just do these insanely big pulls once in a while, and for those insanely big pulls, of course, Ashen is good. But if there's a dungeon where you cannot really make use of Ashen that much, or it's not going to give you that much time, then the rest of it totally makes sense. And I think Theater of Pain might actually be one of those dungeons where the Ashen is never actually that significant. Like, there's never like a super insane pull where you feel like you need it, except maybe in the Gourd Shop wing later. We'll see what Echo is going to be doing with their Ashen there. But yeah, you can see Complexity definitely catching up now, as they're up to 26% trash, and Echo is on 22. Of course, Echo is still doing that pull here, so they're going to be catching up in just a second. But yeah, Complexity definitely just being a bit faster, because Saelia is just sitting on an Ashen, right? They haven't found a good way to use it here, so Saelia is just sitting on it, probably until the boss even.
Until the boss, I think,
unless he wants to commit it for this one, for this 3 trash mobs here, which is also not great, right?
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm just biased on the Druid because I like the idea of having the 8% haste buff, but you don't really get that buff if your healer is dead on the ground. What are they going to do here? Are they going to waste time getting a battle res off, or are they just going to finish off the trash? It looks like Scott doesn't really need the healer alive, but Lip might. The cheat death is procced from him.
The bone spears.
Oh man, the bone spears are going to pull them all. Oh,
and
this
the
is
bolstering.
this is just a disaster. The bolstering is going to ruin this pull for them.
Yeah,
Shadow
it looked like...
Melts. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just going to be a full wipe for complexity.
Yeah, it looked like there were some coordinate, like they just didn't coordinate this pull properly. It looked like JB going down to, I believe, a bone spear, not being interrupted, it looked like, and then there were more casts going through. I would assume that they were thinking about, okay, who's gonna rest, and then some of the interrupts didn't happen, so the cheat death from Lip procced, and then they didn't DPS properly, so some of the mobs died much quicker than others. All of a sudden there was huge bolstering stacks, but it looks like they are actually able to finish this pull off. So even though they lost 3 people, they have 3 deaths on the board, they did manage to finish off the pull, which is incredibly important, right? So this actually didn't cost them too much time. You can see, of course, Echo is already fighting Kultarok, but the percentage for complexity, they're going to be ahead because they're already at 38%. So once this trash pack is down, complexity is going to be ahead in percentage. But I would say this cost them like a total of almost a minute. So definitely a lot of time they have to make up here.
Well, now they do have the advantage of... No, I mean, they can't really even pull Shackletools on top of the boss until the very end, right? I remember they didn't pull any of them, so... I wonder what the play is going to be for them here. They do have more percentage. Yeah, I just want to see if they are going to end up pulling Shackletools at the end of the boss, or if they're just going to do a small pull after the boss. That wouldn't be very efficient either. But you can see the difference here. It's essentially an entire boss's worth of difference at the cost of 4% trash. Echo is very obviously in the lead here, and I mean, I don't want to speak too early, but I think it's going to take more than heroic single target damage on the last boss in order for complexity to catch up here again.
Is Thalia holding onto that Ashen? He didn't even use it on a boss, right?
You're right, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't use it again. Wow.
That's... wow. Okay, so Thalia has been holding onto that cooldown for a long time.
Okay.
Just to use it here for this pull. This is a pretty big pull. This is actually crazy with bolstering, I just realized. Bolstering is making this pull so much more difficult, and they just now aggroed a Butcher as well at the very end. They're gonna have to use a lot of single target damage to get this Butcher lower, otherwise it's gonna be incredibly highly bolstered, and you can see everything is dying as this Butcher is just growing and growing and growing. This chop is gonna do so much damage if it goes through. Looks like they did manage to interrupt it right before, but yeah, no chop can go through. I'm pretty sure that's just gonna be one-shotting people. Devour Flash also needs to be interrupted. Looks like Clicks did that with one of his CCs as they're now moving on. Okay, that was really well executed, and I do see why you would want to have that Ashen Hollow for this pull, because bolstering just makes it so much more dangerous. But yeah, there we go. They did execute it as they're now moving on, using that Shroud to get past that gas bag. They're up to 53%, so they need to do a lot of trash still, actually. We'll see what kind of pulls they're doing. Alright, so they're pulling this Butcher pack with the gas bag as well. Okay, so this is another crazy pull, and they don't have Ashen for this, so we'll see if they can execute it. There's a lot of damage in the group here.
Okay, so I think this is the play for complexity now. If you remember, at the end of that first boss, Echo is at 39% trash. Complexity is now at 48% trash. I think the entire strategy here for complexity is going to be skipping one of those mini bosses in the duelist wing. That is what that extra 9% trash is going to let them do. Is that going to be enough for them to catch up, though? I mean, Echo is pulling off these massive bolstering pulls incredibly clean and quickly. That gas bag pull is not easy to pull off, and there are just more issues for complexity as well, as Lip goes down on this pull that they don't have Ashen for, which makes it that much more dangerous. So complexity, they do have that extra added benefit of not having to deal with one of the duelists, but they're just so far behind right now. I don't see a scenario where they catch up without major mistakes from Echo.
It is crazy that it can even execute this pull without the Ashen. Looks like JB dropped incredibly low now that the tree form ran out, and you can see that mobs are being bolstered here, so this Butcher has so much HP. They have to interrupt all of the casts from now on to not die. Looks like they are now done, so they can move on. They're up to 62% trash, so only 3% behind to Echo. But yeah, of course, Echo already halfway through with Gorge up as well, because they have a really clean run on their side. No mistakes whatsoever on Echo's side. They're also pulling the Horror and the Butcher on top of Gorge up. This means they cannot finish off this trash before the boss. Otherwise, the boss is going to be bolstered. So we'll see how they execute this. Lots of single target damage needed here. This is something they are really good though with this comp. Because on the first boss, they actually managed to finish off the boss before the trash mob that they pulled into it, the Bloodhorn. And I wanted to comment on that one already before, because I was thinking, okay, they must be incredibly like good to focus down the boss, because once the boss is down, the RP already starts for you to get down. So finishing off the boss before the trash makes sense, but because it's free target cleave, it almost seems impossible to not finish off the Bloodhorn first. But somehow Echo managed to do that. So they are very disciplined with the comp that they're running as well, to funnel all of that damage into the bosses, which makes these kind of pulls possible, even though it is bolstering.
Okay, and with that trash skip from Complexity, they aren't going to be skipping a duelist, right? They're just going to be skipping that massive gas bag pull. So I think that's about equally as dangerous, especially when you're considering the bolstering affix, right? Like the fact that Echo was able to pull off that pull was kind of crazy, but it seemed pretty doable. And honestly, doing that pull is probably a bigger time save than just dealing with one of the single target duelists, right? Usually teams will kill the first two duelists together, and then try to skip the third if they can fit that into their route, but it looks like neither of our teams are going to be going for that.
Yeah, it looks like Echo is using that Ashen here again on that mini-boss plus the trash that they pulled. Of course, it is bolstering, so you can't really do any crazy things here in this area, I would say. You want to pull two mini-bosses at the same time if you can, but you would have to pull them at the exact same time, and you can't bolster each other, and it's just very difficult to execute this wing with bolstering. It looks like they're engaging Haruja now as well. I would assume that they're skipping the champion, or maybe just deal with the trash, except the champion when Haruja is lower, to make sure they just cleave it down with the mini boss, and then drag the champion along to maybe be able to deal with it while the last boss's RP is happening. And yeah, it looks like that's what they are doing. So we saw the trap by Jinji to succeed at captain, and the rest of the trash is being pulled on top of Haruja just to get some more efficient cleave done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if I like the way that they did this, but I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter as long as you're just not bolstering things too much, right? I think that's totally fine. And if I'm not mistaken, Echo also still has the trash before the first boss, right? They didn't kill any trash, so that could be the rest of the percentage. And yeah, it looks like it is, as Jinji's getting the position to reset this final mini boss for the team, let everyone run by. He's turtling just to make sure he doesn't take any damage. Then he'll get along with the team, feign death to pull off aggro. Yep, perfect execution from Genji there, and that's how it's done. And that'll be all the trash they need. Once they deal with this captain, all they have to do is cleave down that last few percentage of trash they left at the top of the dungeon after the final boss goes down, and that's going to be all she wrote for their trash count. So Echo has executed all of the most dangerous parts of the dungeon so far. All that's left are these final two bosses for them.
Yeah, and the trap also being thrown out by Jinji, making sure that captain is his seat, so they can deal with it either at the end of staff, or they just deal with it while the last boss's RP is happening. I guess they now have the captain plus those three mobs, and they can't really deal with both of them while the RP is happening, right? So they either kill the captain with Xaf at the very end, or they kill the captain after Xaf and then pull the three mobs at the very end of the last boss. I think I like pulling the three mobs at the end of the last boss, because if they know that they are ahead, then they don't have to risk it, and they can just pull them after the boss is done. And if they think they need it, they can do it with the boss and just risk it, right? So I kind of like this variable strategy that you can go with depending on how far ahead or how close the game is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Complexity did end up going for the double pull at the same time rather than what Echo did, like we were talking about earlier. But the fact that they have to deal with this third duelist is just, I think that's a deal killer for their route, right? Dealing with an extra duelist, an extra single target, giant target dummy, just you have to soak a bunch of damage into, is just about the least efficient thing you can do, even if it is bolstering, right? And actually, they're making it worse by bolstering this up at the end, and it's doing a lot of damage. Check out that bleed on JP. Is he actually going to go down to it? Oh my
Oh my
2%.
goodness.
I thought the final tick was going to take him out. Jeez, that was close. But, I mean, now an entire boss behind our complexity, as all Echo has to do is go upstairs and deal with that last tiny bit of trash. And the thing is, as well, is they can deal with the trash while they're waiting for the boss RP if they really wanted to. But I guess they started it early like most teams will do, while 4 people were dealing with that ancient captain that they left behind. So they can get right into the boss and then cleave down that trash in the last 10% so they don't bolster it up too much.
Yeah, this is what I meant earlier when I said, because at this point they're so ahead. Miris, their 6th player, is going to be watching, and they know that complexity is pretty far behind. So at this point, Echo doesn't even have to risk pulling in the trash, right? They can just finish off the boss, do the trash at the end. Not going to be a big deal. If the game would be closer, they could say, hey, we have to pull the trash in at the end. But no risk this time around, as they are pretty far ahead. You can see the boss is melting for them as well, as they have the Bloodlust and all of the offensive cooldowns available for them. And keep in mind, they also have the Spell Reflect, which is another huge damage gain for them here on Mandratha, while Complexity does not have that available for them. No warrior on their side. So they do have the extra magic damage that you gain from having that Demon Hunter, but you don't have that Spell Reflect. So you can see Mandratha is just dying so much damage on Echo's side. And once they're done, they actually pulled the trash on top, even though they are ahead. So they took the risk anyway. Very interesting choice by Echo as they're finishing off the last trash percentage. And there it is. It is going to be Echo winning that game against Complexity in a very close matchup, though. 2-1 against Complexity.
That's right. Echo pulling out a big win here in Theater of Pain. It's a dungeon, like you're kind of alluding to as well at the beginning of the matchup, Nagura, that has seen some variety, especially on the side of Incarn for different compositions. You know, we were seeing once again the return of that Resto Druid.